My name is Mohammed Taleb, and I'm a recent first-generation Cal graduate who's a Yemeni American Muslim living in East Oakland for about 20 years now. So I'm going to give you my family's experience in Yemen in the war, and I'm going to tie that in to the Muslim ban. And I'm hardly going to scratch the surface of the Muslim ban, so I'm not going to be too informative, but we could talk about that after if you have any questions. So my first generation family of 12 decided to move back to Yemen in October 2014. Yemen is al-Arab, which means mother of Arabs, because Arabs originated from there, and so there's a rich history, culture, and tradition. But Yemen is also the poorest Arab nation, and that was before the war. It lacks any stable or sustainable infrastructure, and experts say that it's the first country, or might be the first country, to run out of water. So I decided to visit my family after they left during winter break. When it was time for me to leave, my dad asked me to stay a week longer. I couldn't because of the semester, so I left, and the war broke out 2 days later. And when the war broke out 2 days later, that resulted in the president at the time to escape to Saudi Arabia. So these are some of the experiences my family had in the war. So they couldn't go out at night because snipers would forcibly take homes and station themselves at rooftops. Eventually that happened to our home. There was constant bombardment of indiscriminate Saudi-led, US-made missile airstrikes, even during Ramadan when everyone was fasting. Neighboring homes were completely ravaged. Bodies were recovered from the rubble and entire families wiped out. I remember my brothers and sisters explaining the different stages of when they saw a missile. First, you watch it fly across the sky. Then you watch it hit a populated neighborhood or village, and you see the raging fire that comes from the explosion. Then you hear the startling explosion, which is quickly followed by the shock wave that shook the ground, the building, and shattered windows. So one time, a missile shock wave blew dirt and dust into the house while they were having lunch, and that was a nice consequence to have during the war. There was a blockade of food and gas. Electricity and water would hardly exist, just like 45's common sense. Tanks would roam the streets like Toyota hybrids, multiple checkpoints, and day-long lines for gasoline and water. My pops, my father, so he got shot in the leg, in his shin, in Taiz, which is one of the most ravaged cities in Yemen. After trying to pick up my oldest brother from the house that got occupied from rebel groups while I was in finals at Berkeley. Luckily, he's alive, but he has nerve damage in his foot. And of course, they had to improvise with the treatment in the war-torn country of Yemen. And I have even mentioned the cholera outbreak that killed thousands of children, elderly, and women. And it was easily preventable with a $10 antibiotic vaccine. And so, if it isn't the missiles killing Yemenis, it's the extreme hunger and cholera infection. So now jumping into the Muslim ban. You know, of course people tried to escape, right? They tried to escape the inhumane conditions, but the airports were destroyed, closed, or taken over by rebel groups. There wasn't no embassy in Yemen forcing people to take a 3-day-long boat ride into Djibouti, which is the nearest African country with an embassy, in order to obtain a visa. So once the Yemenis arrived in Djibouti, they were stuck there for months, some for years, living in a really expensive community where prices were jacked up because of an influx of Yemenis, of displaced Yemenis. Now, a quick overview of the Muslim ban. Right, there's the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. So Muslim ban 1.0 included Yemen, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Iraq, and Iran. And then 2.0 included the same countries, but Iraq was removed. 3.0 included Yemen, Libya, Syria, Chad, Somalia, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. And I haven't even mentioned the backdoor Muslim ban, that, right, with the extreme vetting process at airports and at different stages. So what's interesting is, about 60 people applied from North Korea, so they just kind of like threw that in the ban. And then only some Venezuelan officials were blocked, and that was, in my opinion, a strategic move just to confuse folks into thinking it's not a Muslim ban. But definitely Yemen had the most applicants from all those countries. And so recently the Supreme Court let the Muslim ban go into full effect in December of 2017. And that's confused a lot of folks, that's affected a lot of folks. A lot of people are stuck in Djibouti and other places, in other embassies like Malaysia and Egypt. So in terms of the family, my family in the Muslim ban, my family, or the Muslim ban forced my eldest sister to, and remember, I'm one of 12, and so I'm in the middle. The Muslim ban forced my eldest sister and her, 7 kids, I keep forgetting how many nieces and nephews I have, to undertake a long trip and spend months in Djibouti. Right now, my other sister's husband is stuck in Djibouti for about a year now. It's forced my brother's pregnant wife to be away. Now, I'm sure none of us could imagine the emotional and psychological trauma during wartime for her husband, and her newborn. And so this is the reality of the tremendous amount of Yemenis in the greater Bay Area and the country. And it has forced thousands of Yemenis to drift in Djibouti and other embassies like Malaysia and Egypt. And most, if not all, Yemenis have a strong relationship to people they're bringing in, right? These are mothers, fathers, children, spouses who are usually pregnant. And so this is Trump's Muslim ban effects on Yemenis, our brothers and sisters, our loved ones, in a nutshell. And so I'll end it with Tupac Shakur's articulation of the roses that grew in the concrete. Right, so when a rose grows in the concrete, you don't question its damaged petals. Of course, it's growing in the concrete, it's going to have damaged petals. Right, you celebrate its tenacity and will to reach the sun. And so, frankly, I'm tired of waiting for a miracle to change my community and for someone to come and change it for us. I was the rose who grew in the concrete, and I'm done questioning my community's damaged petals. So when I got accepted to Cal, I was the rose plucked from the concrete and planted with the rose garden. And now I'm bringing fresh water, soil, sunshine into the cracks of the concrete for the roses who have the tenacity to reach the sun. I'm doing this as the founder of the Yemeni Student Association at Berkeley and as the new community advocate with the National Security and Civil Rights Program at the Asian Law Caucus. Inshallah, God willing, we can move from coping to hoping with all our struggles because our liberations are all tied together. Thank you.